You know that feeling when you open your banking app and instead of instantly wanting to throw your phone across the room, you actually smile a little? Like when you stop doing that weird mental math over whether you can grab a latte or if buying groceries means you're on instant noodles for the next 5 days. There's a very specific number where that shift starts happening. And it's not what most people think. Most financial gurus love telling you that you need $1 million to feel rich, or that hitting six figures is the magical moment. But here's what they're missing. There's a much smaller milestone that completely changes your relationship with money. And once you hit it, everything changes. That number is $20,000. I'm Vanessa, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people seem to build wealth almost effortlessly, while other people stay trapped in the exact same financial patterns for years. If you actually want to understand how wealth really gets built, instead of just crossing your fingers and hoping it somehow works out, make sure you subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you see money a little differently. Now, before we get into why $20,000 is the real game changer, let me ask you something. When you think about building wealth, what do you picture? Maybe it's some trust fund baby who's never stressed about a bill in their life. Or maybe it's someone grinding for years, painfully stacking money $1 at a time. But the truth is, wealth building doesn't work the way most people think it does. Here's what actually happens. There are certain financial thresholds that act like invisible walls. And once you break through them, the rules of the game completely change. $20,000 is the first major threshold that separates people who are actually on track to build serious wealth from people who may spend their whole lives stuck in a paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. And the wild part is, most people don't even realize this threshold exists. Think about it like this. If you've ever tried to push a stalled car, you know getting it moving is the hardest part. You're straining, sweating, barely seeing any progress, and seriously questioning your life choices. But once it starts rolling, something shifts. It gets easier, then easier again. And eventually, the momentum starts helping you. $20,000 is that moment in your financial life when the car finally starts moving. Everything before that feels like pushing uphill with no traction. Everything after that starts to feel like the momentum is finally on your side. But here's where it gets really interesting. And honestly, this part surprises a lot of people. The difference isn't just math. It's not only that you have more money invested or that your returns are bigger in dollar terms. The real magic happens in your brain. When you don't have money saved, your brain runs in survival mode. Every financial decision gets filtered through stress, fear, and scarcity. You take the first job offer that shows up, even if it's awful, because you can't afford to wait for something better. You stay in situations you hate because leaving feels too risky. You say yes to things you don't even want to do because, well, you need the money. And this isn't just about being practical. When you're stuck in survival mode, your brain literally doesn't have the room to think about growth, opportunity, or long-term strategy. It's like trying to plan your dream vacation while your kitchen is on fire. Your mental bandwidth gets swallowed by immediate problems and short-term survival. But something kind of amazing happens when you cross that $20,000 threshold. Suddenly, your brain has room to breathe. Instead of asking, how do I make it to next Friday? You start asking, how do I make this money grow? Instead of constantly reacting to the next emergency, you start proactively building a life. Research from Vanguard found that having just $2,000 in emergency savings can increase financial well-being by 21%. $2,000. That's less than what a lot of people spend on a quick weekend trip or a shiny new phone. But that tiny cushion creates a huge psychological shift because it pulls you out of pure survival mode. And when you build that cushion into 3 to 6 months of living expenses, which for a lot of people mans around $20,000, you get another 13% boost in financial well-being. But more importantly, you finally create enough breathing room for your brain to focus on wealth building instead of just damage control. And this is where the math starts getting kind of sexy, honestly. Let's say you're saving $1,000 a month and earning an 8% return on your investments. Getting to your first $20,000 takes about 19 months of consistent saving and investing. That's a year and a half of discipline, sacrifice, and saying no to a lot of stuff you'd probably rather say yes to. It's not easy. And yeah, most people quit somewhere in the middle. But here's the part that really messes with your brain. Your second $20,000 doesn't take another 19 months. It takes about 17 months. Why? Because now that first $20,000 is working right alongside your monthly contributions, generating returns of its own. Just think about that for a second. You did the exact same work. You saved the same amount every month. You took the same level of investment risk. But you got there 2 months faster, just because your money was finally helping. That's compound interest starting to wake up. By the time you're going after your third $20,000, the timeline shrinks even more. Your money starts doing more of the heavy lifting, while your effort stays basically the same. And once you hit the bigger numbers, the acceleration gets almost ridiculous. When your portfolio reaches $400,000, you can generate your next $20,000 in about 5 months. The same amount that once took you nearly 2 years to save is now showing up almost automatically through your investments. That first milestone feels brutal, but every milestone after it gets easier. Now, you might be thinking wealthy people just have access to some secret investing universe that regular people can't get into. Like, there's some velvet rope money club with exclusive hedge funds and private deals and all that. And sure, at the ultra high end, there is some truth to that. But that's not what's driving this $20,000 effect. The real secret is way simpler and honestly, way more encouraging. It's just basic math finally working for you. If you invest $1,000 and it grows 10% in a year, you make $100. Fine. Cute. But take that exact same 10% return and apply it to $10,000, and now you make $1,000 from the exact same investment, over the exact same time, with the exact same level of risk. That's why $20,000 feels like such a turning point. Before that, your returns feel tiny because the base is tiny. A 10% return on $2,000 is $200. Nice, sure, but not life-changing. A 10% return on $20,000 is $2,000. Okay, now we're talking about money that actually matters. When you've got $20,000 invested and it earns 8% annually, that's $1,600 showing up over the course of the year without you doing anything extra for it. Money you didn't have to earn at work. Money that showed up because your money was out there doing its job. And the strategy doesn't need to be more sophisticated than what someone with $1,000 uses. You can buy the same index funds, use the same brokerages, follow the same boring principles. The only difference is scale. And that scale turns small percentage gains into real progress. But here's the part most people completely miss. And honestly, it might be the most important point in this whole video. When you save $20,000, you've done something way more valuable than just piling up cash. You've rewired your brain and built the single most important financial habit you'll ever have. And yeah, I know that sounds a little self-helpy, but stay with me because this is where it gets practical. Think about what it actually takes to save $20,000 from zero. Unless you're making absurd money or paying basically no bills, that takes real discipline. You have to track where your money is going. You have to say no to things you want so you can save for something bigger. You have to resist the urge to blow your progress on every little shiny thing that pops into your head. But most importantly, you have to do all of that consistently for months, maybe years. And in the process, you prove something to yourself that changes everything. You prove that you can control your money instead of letting it control you. You become the kind of person who can delay gratification when it actually counts. That's not just a money skill, that's a life skill. And that identity shift matters because it changes every financial decision you make after that. Before you had $20,000 saved, buying a $4 snack or a coffee might have sent you into a whole internal debate about whether you were being irresponsible. After you hit $20,000, you're not obsessing over every tiny purchase anymore because you already know your priorities are in order. You've already proven you can make the big sacrifices when they matter. But there's another mental shift that happens around this point that people really don't talk about enough. You start seeing opportunities instead of just problems. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, every unexpected expense feels like a full-blown emergency. Your car needs repairs. Your computer dies. Your rent jumps. These aren't minor annoyances. They're financial landlines that blow up your whole month. But when you've got $20,000 in the bank, those same situations feel different. Your car needs repairs. Annoying, yes, but not the end of the world. Your computer dies? Fine, time for a replacement. Your rent goes up? Okay, maybe now you look for a better place. Or maybe you use that moment to negotiate a raise. Even more important, you start noticing opportunities that were always there. You just couldn't act on them before. A friend tells you they're launching a business and they're looking for investors. Before, you might have thought, oh wow, cool for them, and kept it moving. Now, you can actually pause and decide whether it's worth putting a few $1,000s into it. A great deal pops up on a small fixer-upper condo. Before, you'd scroll past it and maybe feel a little bitter. Now, you can actually run the numbers. Your manager mentions a certification program that could open career doors, but your company won't cover it. Before, you just tell yourself it's not possible. Now, you can evaluate whether the return is worth the cost. That's what people really mean when they say money goes to money. It's not some mystical thing where the universe showers rich people with blessings. It's that money gives you options, and options create opportunities to make more money. And here's something else that starts happening around the $20,000 mark that might make you rethink everything you've heard about budgeting. You start caring less about the tiny expenses and more about the big ones. I know, that sounds backwards. But hear me out. When you're broke, every little purchase feels loaded. Should I buy the store brand pasta or the fancy one? Should I pay extra for oat milk? Should I order delivery or just eat whatever random food is in the fridge? Those decisions eat up mental energy because every dollar feels huge. But once you have a real financial cushion, you start realizing those tiny decisions barely move the needle. Spending a few bucks here and there isn't what makes or breaks your future. What matters are the big decisions: where you live, what you drive, how much you save, how much you earn, where you invest. Those choices can swing your net worth by tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars over time. So instead of exhausting yourself over whether to skip Glock, you start focusing on the things that actually matter: your housing costs, your career income, your savings rate, your investment strategy. And that shift is incredibly freeing because it gives your brain space to focus on building wealth strategically instead of micromanaging every tiny transaction. Now let's talk about what happens to your career once you hit this milestone, because this part gets really interesting. Having $20,000 saved doesn't just change your relationship with money, it changes your relationship with work. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're basically trapped in the job you have. Your boss could be unbearable. Your coworkers could be toxic. The work itself can make your soul leave your body every Monday morning. But you stay because you need that next paycheck. That puts you in a terrible negotiating position. You can't really ask for a raise because you're scared they'll just replace you. You can't push back on ridiculous demands because you need the job more than they need you. You can't seriously explore better opportunities because even taking time off for interviews feels risky. You're stuck. And people can feel that. But $20,000 changes the whole dynamic. Suddenly, you have what I call walking away money. You could leave and survive for months while you figure out your next move. That doesn't mean you should be reckless or dramatic about it, but it does mean you're no longer negotiating from desperation. You're negotiating from strength. And that changes everything about how you show up at work. You ask for the raise you deserve because the worst-case scenario no longer feels fatal. You push back on unreasonable expectations because you're not terrified of what happens next. You explore new opportunities because you can afford to take calculated risks. And here's the crazy part. Most of the time, you don't even need to use that walking away money. Just knowing it's there changes your entire energy. You come across more confident, more direct, more willing to take on meaningful work. And when you show up differently, people notice. You get better projects, more visibility, more leverage, usually more money too. It's like having a secret superpower you hope you never need, but just knowing it exists changes the way you move. And then the best part happens. The more confident and successful you become in your career, the faster you build wealth, which gives you even more options, which gives you even more confidence. It becomes a positive feedback loop that keeps gaining speed. But here's where people mess it up all the time. They hit $20,000, feel that shift, and then immediately spend it on something dumb. Maybe they decide they deserve a luxury SUV because they've been disciplined. Maybe they book an expensive vacation because they've earned it. Maybe they use it as a down payment on a house that stretches them way too thin. Don't do that. That $20,000 is not a gold star. It's not a reward for being good. It's the foundation of your financial future. It's the seed. And if you leave it alone long enough, that seed can grow into real, life-changing wealth. And this next part will either make you laugh, cry, or stare at the wall for a minute, depending on your current situation. The average person will spend more on cars over their lifetime than it would take to become financially independent. Seriously. Between car payments, insurance, maintenance, gas, registration, a lot of people are spending $600 to $800 every month just to get around. Over 40 years, that can easily add up to $400,000 or more. And at the same time, those same people are saying they can't afford to invest. It's kind of like paying for all the streaming services, never watching half of them, and then saying you can't afford a gym membership. The priorities are just a little messy. And here's what makes it even crazier. The second you drive a new car off the lot, it loses a huge chunk of its value. So you're not just spending money, you're actively burning wealth. Compare that to investing the same money in a diversified portfolio. Instead of watching your money shrink, you're giving it the chance to multiply. But I get it. Cars are emotional. You want something reliable. You want something that looks good. You want something that makes you feel like you're doing well. And honestly, fair enough. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as you understand the trade-off. That car payment might make you feel rich, but it could also be the exact thing keeping you from becoming rich. And this is where having $20,000 saved changes the way you think about major purchases. Instead of asking, "Can I afford the monthly payment?" you start asking, "What is this really costing me?" That $30,000 car isn't just $30,000. It's also the future value of what that money could have become if it stayed invested. Over 20 years, that same $30,000 could grow into more than $200,000. Suddenly, driving a dependable used car doesn't feel like some sad compromise. It feels strategic. It feels like you're buying future freedom instead of present-day status. And here's the funny part. The person driving the shiny luxury car is often the one quietly stressed about money, while the person driving the older Toyota is sleeping just fine and building wealth in the background. That mindset shift starts showing up in every major money decision you make. Housing, school, travel, hobbies. Everything starts getting filtered through opportunity cost. Not in some miserable, obsessive way where you suck all the joy out of life, but in a way that helps you make conscious choices instead of mindless ones. And let me tell you something that might catch you off guard. Once you start thinking like this, you often realize you don't even want half the stuff you thought you wanted. That bigger apartment? Sure, the extra space sounds nice, but is it worth pushing back your financial freedom by several years? That expensive hobby? Fun, yes, but maybe there's a cheaper version that gives you almost the same joy. That constant lifestyle upgrade? Maybe it wasn't actually making you happier in the first place. This isn't about becoming cheap. It's not about depriving yourself. It's about being intentional. It's about deciding where your money goes instead of wondering where it went. Because when you have clear financial goals and you really understand what compound interest can do, it gets so much easier to tell the difference between what you want right now and what you actually want long term. Look, $20,000 is not going to make you rich overnight, but it will completely change the way you think about money, work, risk, and opportunity. It's the difference between just surviving and actually building a life. Between reacting to everything that happens to you and designing something on purpose. So start building that foundation now, because your future self is dependent on the decision you make today. Trust me, she's going to be very, very grateful. You have rewired your brain and built the single most important money habit you will ever have. And yeah, I know that sounds a little self-helpy. Just stay with me. Think about what it actually takes to save $20,000 from zero.